so I began posting stuff in there. And my best friend also did a new web page for me. And in both cases, I came to that place as, how much do I talk about? Do I blog? Should I put a blog on the website? What do I talk about on the Facebook page? And I decided that I'm not going to blog, that I'm not going to do any of this stuff. Because, as you probably have noticed, I am a very opinionated person. And, you know, and I see that it can turn off people. It can turn on and it can turn off. And I'm more interested in turning on than turning off. And also, your words can be easily, and we've seen this a lot lately, your words, however well-intentioned they may be, can be easily misconstrued. So, you know,
and sometimes rewritten.
And rewritten. So the Facebook page is the most pleasant place that I can possibly make it. I do not intrude with political opinions or anything of that nature. I put funny pictures up there. I put pictures of my new books. I put anything in there, but you're not going to have any, you're never going to see any rants or anything like that. If you want my politics, you can read my books, and even then, good luck, because my political opinions don't, there's no simple left, right, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democratic dichotomy involved there. And I think from my observation of missteps of some of the that some of my colleagues have made, I think some of these guys, you know, love them dearly like my brothers, but I really sometimes want to pick up the telephone and say, "Guy, really, shut up."
I have a slightly different take on it. I decided to exploit social media for me instead of thinking I was doing some great favor to everybody who was following me or friends with me. I decided, you know what, if you're going to follow me or be my friend, you're going to be my guinea pigs. And so what I do is I'm working on 4 or 5 writing projects simultaneously at any given time, because that's the way my brain likes to skip around through different things. And so for me, it's social media is cut and paste. I take interesting things from what I'm working on projects, tweet them, put them on Facebook, and I get interesting feedback that way from people. Plus, I generate interest in something I may be wanting to try to sell to people in 6 months. And so I totally try to exploit social media, not about me, the person, but about things that I'm actually writing to kind of seed the market for people who may be reading that magazine or may want to buy that book. And usually that doesn't backfire. I try to not put controversial things, but I also want it to be interesting. So you walk that line. If it's interesting, it's also possibly controversial. But if it's something a character of mine saying, that's different than me saying it. So a lot of times I can hide behind that this is the story, this is not me. And so I try to exploit it for my own purposes in furthering my writing career, and not just try to be a cult of the personality of me and all about my life and my drama.
How about you guys?
I've been blogging in some capacity since 2004, one or another. Sometimes I was in LiveJournal for a while. Now I just have my own site, jclever.com, and I've had different focuses over time, and some of the best writing connections I've made, ranging from people who are sort of on the publishing end, people who are on the writing end, it happened because of blogging. And to me, it's been helpful. I probably spent too much energy on it early on before I had enough to sell. Did that help? I mean, was it like the daily practice of blogging in addition to sort of writing fiction? I thought it was helpful at the time. Looking back, I don't know. These days, then and now, I try and watch my words carefully. And if I'm weighing in on something controversial, I write it and then I wait, and then I post. Right. Or, but even that said, I go on the assumption that anything I post, social media, it doesn't matter whether there's a filter on it that says it's private.
Yeah.
It's all there, and that includes, frankly, email. If you send it out in an email, somebody will cut it, paste it, and say that you said it. There's nothing particularly bad has happened to me, but I have seen it happen to people. So the screen caps can be taken. People can do a little capture of what's on their screen and save it forever. So if you want to delete that tweet, somebody may have saved it before you had that chance. So
It's on a server somewhere.
Yep, that's right.
Even if you've deleted it, it's on a server somewhere and it can be found. I use social media a lot. I don't get into politics or controversy just because I'm working to not alienate people. I have a growing readership that I would like to keep all of. So by not getting into some of the things that are going to drive people away, I try and keep them. I try and be inclusive, where I let people be red shirts. For those of you that don't know, red shirt is somebody that says, hey, I'd like to be in a book. Use my name. Okay, I use the name, and then like the red shirts on Star Trek, they go down to the planet and bam, they're dead. Brief instant in time. And that gets, inclusivity, brings them in, lets me talk with them about, hey, tell me something about you, I'll put it in the book. And then when the book comes out, they're like, hey, look, I'm in this book. Hey, Mom, buy a copy. Hey, good friend, buy a copy. And it broadens the reach to people by, trying to learn a little bit about them and use that and, be inclusive.
Other question? Okay.
Kind of connected to the blogging thing. I know several of you have worked as journalists before. Is there anything that if you want to be a writer as a journalist you should avoid? Like if they offer you to cover a presidential election, should you probably be like, probably don't?
God, no. I mean, I love being a journalist. I mean, if it were not for the fact that I was overworked and underpaid, I would have stayed in. But I worked at a newspaper where it was, I really was, by the time that Ace gave me that, and Phantom gave me that offered me the contract, I was doing like 60-hour weeks, and it was on the verge of total bloody nervous breakdown. But the time that, everything that I did, and I did cover presidential, I covered New Hampshire primary at one point. And all of that became fodder for the work. There's a fine tradition of novelists, not just science fiction, but across the board, cutting their teeth in journalism. It is a lot to be said for it. It disciplines you. You know how to write every day, whether you feel like it or not. You know how to write concisely for a broad audience. And there's like this huge range, it opens you to a huge range of experience. The one regret that I have of the way that of going from journalism to being a novelist is that I spend most of my days sitting in my office. I don't get out and do enough stuff. And because as a journalist, you spend most of your time out on the streets, and you're not at your desk. And I really miss that, and I wish I had that back. So if you can somehow balance the two off. I answered your question.
Yes, sir.
If you can balance the two things off, and it's really very, very hard to do, because you're having to switch. At some point, you have to switch hat from being nonfiction journalist to fiction writer, and it can be hard to do. But it is everybody from Hemingway on has benefited, I think, greatly from that experience. I know I did.
I've done a lot of freelancing, and at first I chafed under the notion of having to go cover a wedding of a prominent debutante.